Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Throughout mythology, the interaction between gods and mortals is often at the center of it. And of course, this often results in demigods, mortals with divine blood. And this is found worldwide, such as Karna. And I'll try not to butcher these names. Karna is the central figure in the Mahabharata in Hinduism. There is a bit of a backstory, as there always is with demigods. During the Yadava dynasty, there was a king named Shurasena. One day, a seer and scholar named Durvasa came for a long visit, and the king asked his daughter Pritha, also called Kunti, to tend to his needs during the scholar's visit, and she fulfilled her task dutifully. As Durvasa was leaving, he thanked her and gave her the Siddha mantra, which could call upon a deity to give her a child. And like Pandora before her, the teenage Pritha formed the sutra as the sun rose, and she called upon Surya, the sun god. And lo and behold, she soon gave birth to her son, Karna, also called Vasushena, Angaraja, Sutaputra, and Radhiya. And as you may have guessed, she was an unmarried young girl and a member of royalty. Oh, the scandal, which would have happened if anyone found out about this child. So she went down to the river and placed the baby in a basket and let it float down the river and away. Yep, she pulled a Moses. But don't worry, the baby was then found by Radha, who then takes the babe to her husband, Adhiratha Nandana, a charioteer, and they love him dearly and give him the name Vasusena. Though he was treated with nothing but love and kindness, he did develop some insecurities. Namely, his parents never hid how they found him, and he was ashamed of being rejected. Eventually, he would enter school and was taught in the martial arts by the sages Drona and Kripa, but Drona refused to teach Karna the Brahmastra weapon. This was a celestial weapon of incredible power, so Karna resorted to stealth and disguised himself as a Brahmin priest to get accepted by the Parashurama, the incarnation of Vishnu. But the Parashurama discovered the deception and curses Karna to forget everything he learned at the worst possible moment. Now we do need to go back to his mother for a bit. Pritha would then use the sutra several more times after marrying and would have Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. And her sister wife would use the same mantra for Nukala and Sadeva. Together, they would be the 5 Pandavas' children. So we have a few demigods here, and it'll be an issue before long. Okay, lots of issues. And the gods get heavily involved. Now, Arjuna would end up being a classmate of Karna, and Karna and his secret brother didn't get along. Yeah, Arjuna bullied Karna due to his low birth status. But Karna did have a friend in Duryodhana, crown prince of Hastinapura. Now, Duryodhana is one of the Kauravas, the 100 sons of King Dhritarashtra. The Pandavas and the Kauravas were in fact cousins, with each of the two factions controlling vast swaths of land. And the Kauravas and the Pandavas would find themselves on opposite sides of a conflict as they matured. During the time in school, Arjuna and Karna would find themselves facing each other in a match, except low-born Karna would never be allowed to face a prince. So Duryodhana declared Karna a non-king, or Arajna. The similar title was in fact a slight to Arjuna, and he offered to anoint Karna as the king of Agnes in exchange for Karna's continued friendship and loyalty. In doing so, removes any argument Arjuna would have to face Karna. Eventually, Duryodhana and his brothers come into conflict with the Pandavas. But there were attempts to end the conflict, including divine intervention by Krishna. Now this is the first time where Karna learns about his biological mother. Krishna attempted to use this information to soften the feelings Karna had to the Pandavas. The truth was, he was the eldest of them and could become their king. But years of bullying from Arjuna probably didn't help. Karna had already been well known for his insults against them. Karna refuses and claims that Pritha is not his mother. No, it is the charioteer and his wife who were his parents. Not by blood, but their love which made their bonds. So Krishna goes to Pritha and brings her to Karna. And for the first time in his adult life, Karna gets to meet his biological mother, and he rejects her. Even Karna's divine father, Surya, attends this meeting. Karna ignores her pleas to end the growing conflict, but he does make an oath. At the end of the war, she may still have 5 sons. He will spare 4 of his brothers, but either him or Arjuna will die, and he will not forgive him. Part of this ties back to a woman named Draupadi. There was a party and a competition for her hand, and the Pandavas and Karna were in attendance. Mind you, the Pandavas were in hiding due to being hunted. Depending on the version, either Draupadi flat out refused Karna, or Karna was unable to string the bow, which Arjuna succeeded. Okay, this challenge wasn't as simple as it sounded. Draupadi's father had fought Arjuna and lost, but was so impressed by the boy that he conspired to be sure that he would have Arjuna marry his daughter. Now there was protest due to the different status, but Draupadi doesn't care and still chooses the disguised Arjuna. Karna then loses his temper and spews forth the most vile insults for the Pandavas and Draupadi. Yet Arjuna doesn't lose his temper. Later on, Karna would feel remorse for his words and actions, but not before Arjuna and Karna vowed to kill each other. But now the Kurukshetra War, and here is where the full-on war between several demigods and their own factions clash in a series of bloody battles. But first, we need to talk about Karna's divine inheritance. When he was born, he was clad in the mark of his father. He was literally born clad in a golden breastplate, kavacha, and earrings, kundala. These made him immortal. In concept, this is very similar to the invincibility of Achilles, though he was not born with that. Yes, he was born in armor, yet we have seen this before. In Aztec mythology, Huitzilopochtli is also said to be born in armor, but he could still lose a fight, including one to his half-brother Bhima. Now, part of why he lost here is the curse which was laid upon him that caused him to forget his training. But Bhima would fear another battle with Karna, and his divine father Indra concocted a plan to make him mortal. Surya even attempted to warn Karna, but he does decline. Indra comes to Karna disguised as a Brahmin priest, and he asks Karna to give up his armor and earring in exchange for an arrow which can slay any mortal or god, but could only be used once. Karna plans on saving this for Arjuna, but other events would intercede. Yet, why would Karna ever make such a ridiculous deal? Seriously, this sounds stupid. He loses immortality in exchange for a single guaranteed kill. Well, Karna had taken a vow of charity, especially to Brahmin priests, for he believes that it will help bring him fame and renown, the one thing he values above all else, even over victory or revenge on Arjuna. Yes, his pride overwhelmed his very reason. In a way, his oath is very similar to the Gaius of Cuchulainn of Celtic mythology. However, this armor and earring aren't things he can take off. No, they are physically bound to him. He was born with them. That means the only way to remove them was to cut them off. Think about it. He took a knife and literally cut himself to remove his own armor. This is some serious commitment to his oath. Now Bhima had a son named Gatotkacha, who was half Rakshasa, a monstrous race who devoured humans and had illusionary powers. Gatotkacha would lead his forces against Karna and put them on the ropes. Due to his friend's pleas, Karna fires Indra's arrow and slays Gatotkacha. In his final battle, Karna rides in a chariot being driven by King Shalya. Now this king was insulted by being asked to serve someone of lower birth, but agrees with some convincing. But he isn't the world's best driver and gets their chariot stuck. This isn't entirely his fault. Do you remember the curse laid upon Karna? The one which would cause him to forget everything he learned about combat at the worst moment. Yeah, this was the final time it struck. Karna jumps out to protect the chariot. Arjuna sees this and remembers his own son dying the day before due to the same problem. So Arjuna shows no mercy as he struck down Karna, putting the end to their feud. Yeah, they weren't young men. They were fathers with grown children by this point. The one thing I haven't talked about was his weapon, namely his bow, the Vijaya bow. This once belonged to Shiva, who used it to destroy the Tripura, a set of 3 cities of the Asura. You could think of these as a kind of anti-god, or akin to the Greek Titans. So it was fairly powerful in its own right. This was a celestial weapon, and there were several of these weapons in this war. Overall, I would say that Karna is a fine example of the human side of demigods, and I do feel he made a few mistakes. 1. If he had accepted his mother's offer and taken his place among the Pandavas, he could have stopped the war. he could have been made the emperor, and held his position as the eldest brother and first to the throne. But he had issues with his half-brothers. Okay, mostly Arjuna. I mean, he was Karna's bully, and due to their caste, he couldn't retaliate. But his best friend sure did. If Karna had taken his mother's offer, he would then have to be nice to the man who was cruel to him. Yeah, I can see why it was a hard sell. Least of all coming from the woman who abandoned him in a river. Mind you, I don't think his brothers would have followed his lead. Of course, his second mistake was taking off his armor, but it was the reason he slew Gatothacha and saved his men. If he hadn't, he probably would have been wiped out. So, it might not have been a mistake. You can see why I say that Karna is a wonderful example of a human. He has both good and bad traits. He is stubborn and valiant. And those around him are much the same. They aren't simple characters, but complex with motivations that you can follow. Hopefully I didn't butcher these names too much. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.